Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Hack Summit. We're joined here by Aaron Skonnard, the CEO of Pluralsight. So Aaron is the author of several books. He was regularly published in Inc. magazine and is currently writing. He's also the winner of the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award and is currently a member of the Utah Technology Board, as well as the winner of the American Red Cross International Hero Award and winner of the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Award.
Oh boy.
I have a lot of respect for Aaron myself. I look up to him as a mentor for myself. And we're really privileged to have him here today. Thanks for joining us today, Aaron.
No, it's good to be here, Ed. I can't believe it's already been a year since the last one. This is awesome.
Yeah, and we're just really grateful for the audience reception this year. We have over 75,000 who have registered for this event. It's a testament to the fact that developers around the world care about coding nonprofits, care about learning, and mentoring each other and getting educated. And so, I feel like we're very lucky to just be a small part of this.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I was watching almost all day yesterday, and it was just so cool to see, to feel the energy of, the international kind of global audience that was all connecting, with the speakers and learning all these interesting things from wherever they happened to be in the world at the time. And it was like one of the first virtual events where I really felt that energy come through the screen to me, and kind of come inside. And that was really awesome for me. I mean, I was inspired.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I got some text this morning from some other conference organizers, and I think that there's just a lot of just good feelings out there in terms of the fact that the speakers that we have today, including yourself and many others who are so busy, have decided to give us some of their time this week, and it's just very rare to get any of these speakers' times.
No, exactly, and there's a huge hunger for having this kind of learning opportunity and engagement with people like that, who are inspiring and have led such interesting lives and careers. So super grateful to all those people who have agreed to be part of this, and doing it to give back to the community, to empower the community, and it's just watching the streams on Twitter and the questions people are asking and the engagement is really what kind of brings it all to life. It's not just the speakers; it's also kind of that engagement of the community that really makes it real and exciting.
Absolutely. Great. So in today's session, we're going to be doing a fireside chat with Aaron, where we'll be asking him questions. And the goal of this session is really for us to kind of impart best practices and lessons learned and interesting vignettes from Aaron's background so we can all learn from his experiences. And so maybe what would help our audience to get some context here, Aaron, is if you could go into a little bit about kind of Pluralsight, the company that you run, the mission, the history, and the future of the company, and maybe how you kind of got the whole company started originally.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the aim of Pluralsight is not that different from the Hack Summit in that we believe it's our purpose for existing here on Earth to democratize high-quality professional learning opportunities for developers and IT professionals. So that's why we get up in the morning. That's why we come to the office. This is the Pluralsight office here behind me. We have a team of incredibly passionate people who all believe that it's our job to solve this problem for the world. And we're not the only ones engaged in this. There's lots of interesting organizations and companies that help with this problem. But we are actively trying to bring better education, professional education, to developers and IT pros globally, and that's what we do. We didn't start out that way. We started out, as a classroom training company, which probably many people here have done before, and decided, several years into our journey to make a pretty big pivot to this online training model that Pluralsight is known for, and that's kind of what people kind of think of Pluralsight as this online catalog of professional training courses that are mostly video-based formats. But we are kind of branching into other types of learning opportunities, like with our Code School property. You'll be hearing from Greg Pollock, I think, this week as well, who invented this really amazing way to kind of learn programming languages and other syntaxes for the first time right within the web browser. and other types of things like mentoring, assessments, and even this event. All of these things are kind of tied to that mission, that aim of trying to democratize learning opportunities for developers.
So what does that mean, the whole idea of democratizing learning for developers?
Well, it was interesting. I think it was Orion yesterday who was talking about you have to live the pain to really be able to figure out how to solve the problem. Was that his talk? I think it was, right?
Yes.
And that was true for the founders of Pluralsight. Myself, Keith Sparkjoy, Fritz Onion, we're all professional developers first. Like we wrote code for a living and love to solve problems that way. And then later on in our careers became, trainers, professional trainers. We spent at least half of our time out there in the world teaching people these things, and became very familiar with that whole business model and kind of the problems that it's trying to solve, and the limitations inherent in kind of the physical classroom, human-driven, live, ILT, we call it an instructor-led training model. And it was basically all the pain points around it, the fact that, you couldn't really control the quality as well. You had to find the right time to get the right person to come to your company to teach the class, or find the right open enrollment class to go attend, remotely. And those things, always were really costly. So there was lots of friction around the model. That's probably the easiest way to describe it, that got in the way of people actually learning. And then it was also incredibly costly. It was really pricey. Really, it was only the most wealthy companies in kind of first world nations that could afford to provide this type of learning benefit to their employees. And individuals didn't have a lot of options that were easily accessible online during those years. It's late 90s, early 2000s. And so that's really what caused us to want to tackle this thing, to really take that same type of high quality education that was only accessible through that kind of friction-filled, costly model of the past, and make it frictionless and really cost efficient for the future. And that's really what we mean by democratizing. We want to increase accessibility to people all around the world, so everyone in any country globally can get access to this kind of high quality education that will empower their future careers.
That's great. And then, so how does the kind of social entrepreneurship angle of kind of the Hack Summit and the Hack Pledge and Hack Guides, how does that all fit into the Pluralsight overall mission?
Yeah, well, we've always believed that there's a huge part of our purpose is to make these things available to people in a variety of different economic scenarios, and that a big part of our ability to kind of change the way the world sees this is through various social and giving back models, right? So there's always been a component of that in almost everything that we do. We're always trying to give back to our local community here in Utah and where our other offices are located, and also through the broader developer community and other communities that we serve as a company, to our author community, the people who are coming in and building courses for our platform. So we've done lots of things over the years that have had no economic, no tangible, immediate economic, impact on the company, but things that we're able to do because of our infrastructure and because of our business model and because of our, our desire to want to help. So Hack Summit is one example of that. We think this is something that gives us broad reach, and we really love what this is doing for people around the world and want to continue to support it. We also recently, decided to partner with the White House here in the U.S. to provide free training to unemployed people, because we believe that's something that will create more developers in the future. And that's a small way we can help with that initiative. And there's things we've done here in Utah as well. We've given all high school and K through 12 teachers free access to Pluralsight, so they can learn more, pick up some of these skills, and then build coding classes in their schools. We're also experimenting. We have a group here at Pluralsight that just has kind of spontaneously formed to figure out how to help create more developers in Africa. And so we're doing an experiment this year by trying to build a school or partner with some computer programming centers down there to inspire, that's just one part of the world that we're passionate about, but we'd like to see that happen kind of everywhere. So those are just a few things.
That's great. I love it. And I think like one thing that I think is fascinating to me is kind of the culture of Pluralsight that made all this stuff possible. So like because there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience here and technical leaders who are running large teams. And I think they may be curious about cultural lessons learned inside of Pluralsight that they might be able to bring to their organization. So maybe you talk a little bit about how the Pluralsight culture is different than other companies and how other companies might be able to learn some best practices from them.
Yeah, well, like several people talked about yesterday, I think it's really important to have a really clear purpose and a stated purpose for what you're trying to accomplish. So I'd say first of all, everyone in the company knows what problem we're trying to solve. I mean, you've been here, you've talked to people, you know what I'm talking about. But if anyone in the audience like ran into someone at Pluralsight at a conference or at some event and just said, hey, what is it you're trying to do at Pluralsight? Like everyone would be able to articulate, well, we're trying to democratize professional learning for technology, like especially for developers, and they'd be able to talk about it deeply. Like, what does that mean? And, how are you going about solving that problem? So I think first of all, like building a culture, a purpose-driven culture is just part of who we are. And that's one thing that really sets Pluralsight apart from, I think, other companies, especially in the learning space. But then after that, like we'd really try to, empower the individuals. I'd say we have a culture focused on trust, where we really trust our employees and we try to foster some really helpful core values in terms of who we hire, how we think about, building teams of people that share common beliefs. And they're core values that I think still introduce and encourage diversity. We're not trying to find a bunch of clones of, people, but, things that really empower the right kinds of engagement and interaction around our aim. So our three core values at Pluralsight are truth seeking, finding truth seekers, entrepreneurs, and eternal optimists. So we want to work with people who want to kind of, display those values. Truth seeking is all about, finding the truth in things, looking at data, not, asking the hard questions and not being afraid of the answers, being able to engage in conflict and be able to work through that until you find the right solution. It's the hard stuff, so we talk about truth seeking a lot at Pluralsight and always trying to learn and improve. Then being an entrepreneur is about putting on that entrepreneurial hat every day and acting like a steward of the business and wanting the trust of the business to be able to go solve really hard problems like it's your company. And then being an eternal optimist is just, trying to see the world through as a glass that's half full and not half empty, and looking for solutions as opposed to obsessing over the problems. And, all of those things, when you kind of look at the mission, the core values, the kind of people that are here, the environment that we try to create for innovation, I think that's what ends up making Pluralsight what it is.
That's great. I love it. And so, and by the way, to the audience here, if you are internally within your company kind of struggling with culture, Aaron's one of the people that I looked up to in this regard. And I learned a lot since I met Aaron about culture. Pluralsight has a very unique culture, different than almost any other company that I've met. And so I think there's a lot to be learned here. And specifically, what I want to dig in here on is how to interview people so that the culture is maintained. Like, let's say, it's very easy for example, a startup company of maybe 2 or 3 people to have a culture that's strong at the beginning. But then as you scale out, how do you maintain that culture? How do you interview for culture? And then how do you compare the idea of interviewing someone for a good culture fit versus the best developer, the best skilled laborer for that particular job?
Yeah, this is where it gets really hard. And there was a great talk yesterday on the hiring practices, which I listened to and devoured. I thought it was just really amazing insights on all of this. It's really hard. I would say the hardest thing about hiring for culture is it's really hard to determine ahead of time. It's really hard to measure, so what we have found is that it's easier. I mean, we try to do it, like we try to do it through the interactions that we create during our interviewing process, the one-on-ones, the interviews, the team interactions that we try to engage people in, so we can actually make people comfortable and try to understand if they feel good, if it feels like the right fit, right? So, in an interview setting, it's almost impossible to determine, I would say. But you can start to feel it pretty quickly. And so I'd say, letting the process unfold naturally and giving yourself time to kind of feel through that, especially when you're small, is really critical. But then as you start to grow and get bigger, you have to figure out how to let these processes scale. And that's where it gets harder and harder to manage, to some of the stuff that was mentioned yesterday. And so I think that ultimately you have to really, I think one of the most powerful things you can do is to define a clear culture and get it out there to the world. So if you go to pluralsight.com/careers, for example, you can watch a video about the company. You can get a feel for what our employees sound like and what they talk like. You can get a kind of a sense of the culture just by kind of watching that. And then we have our culture guide on there that you can download and read, which is about 10 pages of text that describes very succinctly like what we value as a company and how we treat people and how we like to operate. And then it's that stuff that like pulls people in. It becomes the magnet. So as opposed to kind of being out there sifting through and trying to measure for culture fit, I would say in general, our posture is we prefer to kind of send out a strong culture signal to the world and then let that attract the right people into the company. And it's pretty obvious when people show up who are inspired by that. Because
that's great. I love it. And so like, what if you're working at a bigger company and the culture might not be ideal? Do you think it's possible to kind of refactor a culture that may be partially broken today? Or do you think it has to be started from the get-go? And it might be helpful to share your story, by the way, about how the culture started at Pluralsight.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the whole reason Pluralsight exists is because we weren't happy with the culture at the prior company. I mean, we were for a long time. It was this company of amazing developers and thought leaders and people who really loved to kind of come together and solve problems. And then through a sequence of unfortunate events that then unfolded over several years, the culture started to kind of fall apart. And one of the key founders left the company, who was kind of the culture ambassador. And then it just kind of quickly changed. And Pluralsight was kind of born out of a need, like an internal need from us as the founders to want to kind of create and preserve that work experience that we had over there. And I think that happens to a lot of people. Culture's, one of the reasons why a lot of companies do get formed is it's like the desire for a better culture. And so, I would say if you're in a big company like a Microsoft or an Oracle or whatever, in there, it's really hard to affect culture pervasively. You might be able to create a really cool culture within your team. I think that's possible, but you may not be able to control kind of the external factors and policies and processes that, you're subject to within that, corporate ecosystem. The way to change it ultimately is to get to the CEO who has to fully believe in the vision for cultural shift you have in mind. I think that's the only way you can guarantee a company-wide shift in culture.
That makes sense. And tell us a little bit about the idea of transparency. This was touched a little bit on yesterday, but how do you think organizations are thinking about transparency today versus how they might have been thinking about it a few decades ago, and what is the impact that has on culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think most so I would say this is a big difference between developers and MBAs, like business people. Developers always, I think, just inherently believe in transparency and the power of that because of how it fuels, thoughts and problem solving, and then, getting to the root of issues, truth seeking, as we like to call it. Whereas I think a lot of people that come from more of a corporate background and grew up in big bureaucratic corporate entities end up, getting conditioned to protect information from the wrong, from getting that information in the hands of the wrong people. And that's where politics and power struggles and all those things kind of come in. It's like information is power, and we want to kind of control who has access to what. And I think those are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think what you're seeing today is a lot of more modern, especially developer-led companies have shown that you can actually create cultures that embrace transparency throughout. And it's that transparency that actually empowers faster innovation, better solutions to problems, and just healthier work environments overall. So, I mean, that's something that we truly, embrace and believe in, and where every day we're kind of challenging ourselves, or I would say we're not perfect at this right now. We have a lot of room to improve, and we're always trying new things. For example, we just decided to start sharing our board decks with the entire company. It was something we hadn't ever done before, and something that I believe is going to increase the level of transparency company-wide. And other, there's lots of things that we can do, and there's lots of great examples of developer-led companies who are doing amazing things who we're learning from today.
That's great. So let's say you're a developer in our audience, and they're looking towards learning in terms of their career.
Yeah.
Towards the next step, and they're thinking about things like, do I go back to school? Do I get a degree? Do I care about certification? What is the power of learning as a developer, and how does that affect your career?
Well, I would say, learning is the thing that creates new opportunities. That's the first thing you have to realize. Like, if you're ever feeling bored or unhappy or unsatisfied in your career, learning is the solution. Just saying, I'm going to go learn this new thing that interests me. Like that, not only does it bring in a tremendous amount of intrinsic motivation and joy, it also is the very thing that kind of opens up and creates new opportunities for you in your career. And that could be across any subject matter or any career trajectory that you want to pursue. So it could just be a new technology stack, some new thing that the world is crazy about right now that you want to dig into and learn. Or it could be, I want to learn this whole, I want to shift. I want to go to maybe down product design or user experience, more of a user experience focus as opposed to coding. And that's a kind of a more subtle shift. Or it could be something as bold as saying, I want to actually be an entrepreneur. I want to be a CEO or run a company. I want to go start my own thing. And all of those pursuits are possible. I think that's the first thing for everyone to realize. We often think that because I'm a developer, I will always be a developer, and that's the only thing I can love. I used to feel that way. And in fact, when I started Pluralsight, it was because we were really interested in the opportunity around learning all of these other things around what it takes to build a business and what that would be like. And at the time, we didn't know anything. I didn't have an MBA. I didn't have any sort of business background, neither did my co-founders. We were just developers. And so, you can choose any path you want, and learning is the tool that gets you there. So I'm a huge believer in that. And it's a solution to a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's funny, like I've noticed a trend here actually at the Hack Summit where many of our speakers, when they started their first business, and these are very successful businesses, Heroku, right?
Yeah.
Companies of that scale, right? A lot of these entrepreneurs, at first, they didn't really have all that experience, and it was risky for them. It was scary, to take that risk.
Yeah.
Was there a moment in the kind of the trajectory of Pluralsight that was kind of scary for you in terms of having to make a tough decision along the way?
Yeah, there were a couple. The first one was walking away from the training company we were working at before, and just knowing that we were on our own for the first time ever. And we didn't have any venture capital or anything. And so what Keith Fritz and I decided was we were just going to save up some money for a while and just have enough money in our personal bank accounts to live on for a year each. And so that first step off the cliff into like living off of our savings and then having to kind of figure out a way to make it work was scary decision number one. I would say scary decision number two came, that was in 2004, by the way. That was when we started the company. And then in 2007, when we made the decision to build this online thing, was scary decision number two, because it was going to take a lot of time, a lot more energy, shift of focus. Again, when we already kind of had a healthy business at that point, and we were kind of compromising all of that again. Once we kind of had achieved stability, we were kind of putting it all at risk again. And then 3 years later, in 2010, when we decided to kill the classroom training business entirely and just basically put it behind us and focus on this online model. That was scary decision number 3. And there's been more after that, but when I look at the trajectory of Pluralsight, like each of those were moments where you just kind of had to take a deep breath in and say, you know, this feels right. It feels aligned with our vision of what we're trying to do. And, you know, and hey, even if we fall flat on our face, at least we're going to learn something. And so if you kind of always approach those problems through the like looking at the world through the lens of learning and what you're going to learn, it kind of makes it easier, I think.
I agree with that. In fact, I'll add to that. So, you know, in my personal life, about 10, 15 years ago, a very close friend of mine took me aside and said, Ed, you know, you've got some friends in your life who are what I would call lifelong learners. These are people who are inquisitive, you know, they're curious, and they just love to learn, and they love to evolve and grow as a human being.
Yeah.
And then there's other people in your life, Ed, that are not lifelong learners, and they're not really as inquisitive. And you might want to consider trying to surround yourself more with those lifelong learners, because you are kind of a function of who you surround yourself with, and your personality is kind of a reflection of that. And so that's kind of what I've been trying to do for many years now. I've been trying more and more to do that. And and you know, when I see people like, for example, like Floyd Marinescu yesterday, and you here today, right? That's kind of why I surrounded myself with folks like you guys, because it helps me learn and evolve as a human being. So I apply that to my personal life.
Yeah, I've appreciated that about you, getting to know you, Ed. I can see that that's true. I mean, it's just there are people who have a growth mindset, and there are other people who have a fixed mindset. In fact, there's a great book about this called Mindset. Just look it up on Amazon. It's just called Mindset, and it talks about this phenomenon. And when you kind of once you understand this principle, the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, you start to look at the people in your lives, you can easily start to like categorize people into those two buckets. It's also inspirational for yourself, because it helps you realize how to kind of constantly be in the mode of learning and having this growth mentality. There's another book recently, see if I can find it here. Could you grab me, Rookie Smarts and Mindset? Can you give me that other book too, real quick? I wanted to show you guys a couple of books that I'm reading right now. Like these are not developer books, but these are like, we're always reading books. This one is about how to scale a culture at a larger engineering kind of driven company. This is Google's story about how they built their culture by Laszlo Bock. And phenomenal book for us at like this moment in time as a company. I'm also like reading this book right now about predictable revenue as a SaaS. I mean, I'm a developer, but like I have to understand these things. You know, I started out as a developer, I should say, and you know, and now these are the kinds of things that I like pick up to learn. So I learn about culture, I learn about finances, about business model. This is that book I was talking about called Mindset, highly recommended. And this gal who I know quite well wrote another book similar to that called Rookie Smarts. This is about like how to always have the rookie mentality in your career. Like one of like what happens to a lot of people as they grow and kind of succeed in their career is they start to become the expert, the one that everyone comes to get answers to questions. Like this probably happened to a lot of you out there in the audience. Either if you're on the beginner side of the journey, you're going to those people to learn and to have a mentor and to get answers. And then you become the mentor or the expert. And then the risk in that is that you stop feeling like a rookie and you stop having that growth mindset. And so it's really important to like challenge yourself throughout your life and career to like always maintain that. And to like Ed's point, always surround yourself by other people who you can learn from, regardless of what stage you're at in your career. Because it's really easy to kind of get trapped into being the expert and you stop growing, you stop learning.
Yeah, I think what happens naturally is that people eventually develop kind of like an ego as they evolve a little bit in life. Because what happens is, see, it's kind of funny. The first company I worked for was a company called Trilogy in Austin, Texas. And I remember that there was this amazing developer at that company. His name was Sean Smith. And there was like this giant line outside of his door every day to ask him engineering questions. And like a lot of companies have this. They've got like that one person who is like the expert developer inside the company. And what winds up happening is, as you start to get asked more and more questions, and as you become the internal expert within the company, you start to develop it's natural and human to start to develop kind of an air of authority. Like, you are the expert within the company. But there's a danger there, because if you accept that mantle too much, you could become complacent and stop learning, and then you kind of lose your edge.
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, I think what it's super inspirational to me to see people who are continually stretching themselves. Like, she talks about that in this book, like having, like, you always, like, it's like a rubber band. Like, you want to stretch yourself by surrounding yourself with people you can learn from, challenging yourself with whatever the role is you're going to do today, or the technologies you're going to use, to where you're stretched pretty thin, but it's not going to snap, right? And then, but if it feels like that rubber band is getting kind of relaxed and there's no tension there, you're probably not stretching yourself enough. And that's really where growth and all this learning ultimately comes from. I mean, there's countless examples of developers who have evolved into very successful CEOs who knew nothing about business. I think Slack, Stuart Butterfield is a good example of that. I think the guys at Atlassian are good examples of that. I think, even Mark Zuckerberg is a good example of that. And so, they have to keep learning and surrounding themselves with people who they can learn from, who have the skills that they don't have. But it doesn't mean they can't be, the CEO.
That's great. So tell us a little bit more about kind of the Pluralsight product and how that's evolving to help developers learn better.
Yeah, so a couple things we're doing. I mean, we're constantly, our main goal, our fundamental objective is to, basically empower professional developers with the learning they need to acquire and to continue to evolve all of today's latest skills that are needed in the industry. So we're trying to keep up with the fast pace of change. That's the fundamental problem we're trying to solve. I mean, the technology landscape changes so quickly. Like, if you're in, if you use JavaScript or any of the multitude of JavaScript libraries that are out there, how quickly those things have changed over the last few years. And so, just as a developer trying to keep up, like, that's probably one of the biggest issues, is like the number of, there's a stat that I don't know if it's true or not, but it says that typical developers today have to replace about half of what they know every 2 years. So their half-life of skills is about 2 years long. That may be a little aggressive, but there's a lot of truth to that idea. And so Pluralsight's core product, which is our online training library, is designed to kind of bring in all of those technology courses and learnings as quickly as we possibly can, while maintaining an incredibly high quality bar. So the way we do that is we go out to the world and we attract authors who are experts in their field, and we bring them in to basically share that knowledge with our community worldwide, globally. And that's kind of the core of what we do. And then on top of that, more recently, we've been trying to figure out how to provide, more technology around that learning experience that accomplishes two things. One, helps our learners understand, like, what they know and what they don't know through assessment technology. So assessments are becoming a big part of our future now, on top of the course experience. And then being able to connect with other people live, like be able to find mentors around the world who can help them on that learning journey. And that's really what brought our two companies together, with HackHands, and ultimately brought hack.summit into kind of the Pluralsight family, was the desire to want to be able to offer that up. So, like, basically core learning, core content, knowledge, plus assessments and mentoring. That's kind of the universe of Pluralsight today.
And how do you see in the future the split happening between instructor-led training versus online training? Like, let's say you're a developer in the audience and you're looking to get that next job, or you're looking to kind of advance your career. What are your predictions in the future for where the trends are going and how a developer would make a decision like that?
So specifically, like, maybe can you repeat that one more time? Like, how will developers, like, choose the path they want, or?
Yeah. I mean, like, if you were a developer today and you were just starting out, right?
Yeah.
And you were looking at all the variety of learning options in front of you. Like, one of them, for example, could be, going back to school, taking in-person kind of classes. Another would be maybe reading books, for example, right?
Right.
Another might be taking online classes like through Pluralsight.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think the pros and cons are of all those approaches? Because there's some developers in our audience that might be looking for that next career move, or maybe even they're happy at their company, but maybe they just want to improve their knowledge to that next level.
Yeah. Well, all those things are very effective in different ways. We actually have a poll in here. Looks like we got quite a few people to answer it that looks at like what are people in the audience using today for learning. And what's interesting, if we look at that here, is we have about 25% who are now saying online training, 24% Stack Overflow, which is not surprising. And then and then people are still using books, still using blogs, but look at how small classroom training is now. That would not have been the case 5 years ago, or even probably 2 or 3 years ago. A lot has been shifting, I think, with the democratization of this type of learning opportunity. So I would say, I mean, it comes down to how do you learn the best individually. Some people learn better through books than they do from watching videos, but that's not always true. It really kind of depends on some of the personal learning preferences and what seems to be most effective. So I always encourage people to try them all, at least what's accessible to you, what's available to you, and then figure out like what is really going to help you the most. I still obviously read books. I read lots of books. I also watch a lot of online training courses and interact with different types of learning sites. And so, I think what you're seeing happening in the world is developers are kind of building their own, training path for themselves that's very customized to what they like and what they do best. Podcasts, we should probably have podcasts in here. A lot of people listen to podcasts, in their commutes to work and while they're, kind of have downtime. And, I think it's a combination. It's usually probably 2 or 3 of these things coming together that really provides a really rich learning experience for people.
Yeah, that's great. So in the audience, if you guys don't know this, so what's fascinating is that like 10, 15 years ago, I was actually running an instructor-led training company. And Aaron was also running one too. And we were actually competing we were competing with each other. It was competing training companies. And I eventually sold my training company because I saw that it was becoming kind of a saturated market and competition was heating up. Rates were commoditizing. It was tougher to build a business that way. And I saw that there was kind of the handwriting on the wall that things were moving more electronic over time, and that trend was happening, and that it was inefficient, to fly around. I was flying around the world teaching people how to program, and it was inefficient. I remember I would charge $25,000 a week for my time. It was ridiculous, right? Like that's how much we charge at our company. Could you imagine paying that much for an instructor-led training course? It's absurd. That's what the rates were back then. And then there's travel expenses on top of that. So we charge for the travel expenses too. It was crazy back then.
Yeah, I mean, you can clearly see the shift here, at least in this audience, that not very many people are still using it. If they are, it's probably because they're at a company who is still doing things that way and requiring it, or maybe they still really like it. There are some people who still really like that experience. But I think, I mean, in terms of choosing between these, I would say different tools for different types of learning, right? Like, I would say the reason you're probably seeing that shift in classroom training to online is because those are very equivalent to each other. The kinds of things you do in the classroom is very similar to what you can now accomplish online. So there's not a huge differential in value in terms of like with that comes with the extra cost of the classroom experience. It's really just that ability to talk to someone. That's the main difference. But that's now becoming a lot more possible through these online platforms. So that shift makes sense. But books, on the other hand, is a very different type of learning mode and has benefits of its own. Some people, when you really want to go deep and be thoughtful and really kind of get to the heart of how something works, books are often a more effective means for doing that. And you can control your speed and velocity through the material much better than you can with video. So a lot of people prefer books that way. I would say blogs are better for more timely information, things that you want to like get really specific answers to really, really quickly. Same with Stack Overflow. Those two are kind of similar to each other in that way. And I think conferences is more of a networking opportunity than a real learning opportunity. It's more about exposure to an industry, to trends, to things that are changing, and to people who can possibly help you. But but I would say the kind of the formal training is now starting to consolidate more in the online direction, which is encouraging to see, because I think it's just a better model.
I agree. So let me ask you a few more questions, then we'll go to the audience after
Yeah.
that. So I want to talk real quickly about your choice of venue for your company. So, you
Right.
guys built Pluralsight in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is kind of an unconventional choice to build a startup company. So now that you've been doing this for 9 years now, how do you think the ecosystem in Utah and other kind of non-Silicon Valley, quote unquote, startup ecosystems, how do you think those compare to building a company kind of closer to the investors, to the Silicon Valley ecosystem? What are the pros and cons, and what's it like to run a company in like, outside of the core startup ecosystem in San Francisco?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think there wasn't a lot of thought that went into it. I mean, the main, in the beginning, I would say, like, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to be in Utah for strategic reasons. It was because I was here and I was going to be taking kind of the leadership role at that point in time. And so we just said, well, we'll start building a little team around me here. And that was why we did it. But then as we started to grow, we realized that there were lots of advantages. And in the beginning, it was like probably the biggest con in the beginning for being in Utah is, like, if you really need to raise money, like 10 years ago, that was really hard to do here because you just weren't surrounded by investors and people, there just wasn't a robust community, startup community around us. That's changing now. But back then that was certainly the case. But so even though that was a con, it was also a blessing in disguise, because it was the very thing that forced us to become profitable. And we've been profitable for the last, 10 plus years that we've existed. And so, when you don't have that, you kind of are forced to think about building your business differently, which is actually turned out to be a really healthy thing for us as a company in the end, and has also led us to thinking much more long-term than short-term. I think in Silicon Valley, when you have so many investors involved in the businesses, it leads to shorter-term thinking in general, and that can be unhealthy for businesses. And so I mean, for us, like, we're really happy that we're here, and now it feels like we have a much kind of healthier ecosystem to build on, because like in Utah, we do have a healthy tech community. We do have a startup community that's really starting to blossom and emerge. And there's lots of people here in the state that want to be involved in companies like this. And there's just a better balance in life and quality of life here than I think in some of those other cities that are known for that. And I think it will just lead to a longer term, healthier business in the end that's able to kind of accomplish our aim over time.
That's great. Okay, so last two questions.
Yeah.
One is, I want the audience to maybe glean a few best practices from the internal, metamorphosis that's been happening inside of Pluralsight from a technology perspective.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Pluralsight originally was on kind of a monolithic system, and a transition recently. So what happened there, and what can our audience learn from that journey?
Yeah. So I mean, we built the first Pluralsight website from the ground up. Keith Fritz and I just slinging code and just trying to get our MVP out to the world, and just grew it slowly and incurred a lot of technical debt by just building one big monolith website application in the end that made it really hard to evolve and build over time. And so there are a couple key things happened as we knew this was happening, like we were accruing this technical debt, and that we weren't able to kind of evolve different parts of the site without impacting other things very easily. So our own kind of maintenance and speed started to kind of slow down. And we also introduced a product organization for the first time. So product managers who were focused more on user design and understanding what our users really wanted. And we started to divide our product and engineering teams into user-centered product teams that are like 5 or 6 people in size, with a real clear focus on a user that they're serving and a real estate on the website that they would own and be able to deliver on. And then it was basically all of that stuff happening that helped us realize that we have to break apart our website architecture into more of a bounded context model, right? That would build on messaging and services to basically let each team own different contexts within the architecture, and then they could actually own everything all the way to deployment without being dependent on other teams or other parts of the site. And so this was something that we went through over about a year-long period. We completely re-architected the website architecture to facilitate that. Gave each team kind of ownership over these different bounded contexts. And just now, like over the last 6 months, this has all been coming to fruition. And now we actually have this architecture that allows each team to kind of move independently from one another at a much better velocity. And during that process, we cleaned up a lot of technical debt.
That's great. Wow. Yeah. And I've actually seen that trend with other startups as well and larger companies. There seems to be this transition towards reactive programming where you have a loosely coupled set of systems with high cohesion.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
they're all using RESTful APIs basically. And
yeah, that's how we think about it.
Yeah, and that paradigm seems so powerful because, an individual team member, a developer, can maintain a microservice within their organization, and they can be responsible for some of the DevOps for that as well.
Yep.
And there doesn't have to be a central administrative policy, and a lot of kind of bureaucracy. And what I like about the paradigm too is that it allows for different groups within a company to collaborate and to have independently designed systems where they don't affect each other, so that each system can evolve independently so long as they keep their API contract to the other systems that are using them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're definitely seeing a lot of benefit from moving to this model because it does allow, that kind of autonomy and flexibility across those teams, which is really leading to ultimately being able to deliver value more quickly to our customers.
Great. Okay, so let's go to the last poll here, then we'll go to the audience Q&A. So you asked a question, have you transitioned from a developer role to a non-developer role? So 17.7% have, and 82% have not.
Interesting. I mean, that's actually more than I thought, almost 20%. It's, I mean, this gets back to one of the things we talked about, that it is possible to do that if that's something you want to do. I'm not trying to evangelize for people to not be developers anymore, but in any kind of learning journey or career progression, it's just a matter of, can I surround myself with the right people and learn the things that I need to learn to basically evolve into whatever role I'd like to have new experiences in my life and in my career. I mean, I spent some time with the Atlassian guys recently, and I'm just super impressed with how they've built their company over time, because they're a couple of developers, wrote all the code in some of the initial products that they sell now today, have scaled into a massive company. It was one of the most successful tech IPOs of last year. They went out December of 2015. And they're one of the healthiest companies on the stock market because they're profitable. They think long-term instead of short-term. They are led by developers who believe in transparency and a healthy culture over time. And when they think about things like even like sales and marketing, they take a very engineering-oriented approach to solving those problems. They realize that all business is just inputs and outputs. And if I can basically, just think about that as an engineering problem, whether it's the culture or whether it's marketing or anything else, then like all the things that they've done in their career up to that point, like serve them well in making those decisions.
Great. So let's go to the audience questions here. So, feel free to pick off any of the ones that you think are interesting here.
Yeah. Well, the first one we could do really quickly, do we plan on adding certifications to Pluralsight courses? Yes. Two things. One is we are adding more and more courses to cover the vendor certifications. You'll see that in our IT section, as well as there's more coming in the developer section. So those courses will prepare you for like a Microsoft certification or a Cisco certification. But we're also adding in our own assessment platform that will allow you to assess your skills at kind of more of a skill level, like a JavaScript skill, a Ruby on Rails, or whatever the technology happens to be. And that will kind of become a score that feels a bit like a skill level micro certification. And that's coming here very soon within the next month. You'll see the first version of that release. How much money does, what was the next one? How much money does an average Pluralsight author make?
And maybe we'll add to that. Maybe you could go over quickly what is the financial model here? How does that whole process work of being an author?
First thing to realize about being a Pluralsight author is it's not a full-time gig. You don't have to leave your job to come and do this. It's more like Uber, where you can just kind of sign up to be an author and work it into your schedule. And then we pay for courses through an upfront completion fee along with a long-term residual royalty. So there's a small fee upfront that we pay once you deliver the course, and then you start making money over time as people watch your course on the platform. So you basically get a share of the subscription revenue. And basically, I think the average across the entire user base is once an author has done at least 5 courses, their earning potential actually goes up because they get better at it. So there's one average for like 1 course, but then when you look at someone who's done like 5 courses, the average turns out to be about $3,500 in royalties per course per quarter. So that would be more like, you know, $15,000 per year per course type of a thing, like once they've achieved that many courses in the library. The average across the entire author pool on an annual basis is probably like $25K a year. But like I mentioned with the other stat, the authors who come in and do multiple courses end up doing quite well, and some actually end up replacing all of their income and just end up doing a lot of Pluralsight along with consulting on the side.
And how much has the top authors made?
Our top author last year made over $2 million, so that's an outlier, but
it's an incredible model. Like, one thing that's fascinating to me about this is that you know, back when you and I were running instructor-led training companies, you know, we'd fly to a company, we'd teach them, they'd pay us, right? We charge a lot of money for that week, but that would be it, right? You know, we'd make some money and then we'd have to do it again, right? To keep the income coming in. But with Pluralsight, an author can get this recurring source of income if they just build a course once and maintain it in a minor way over time.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly right. It's we really believe that that's important to our model. We believe that we're partnering with our authors. They're the suppliers to the business in the end, and really the core value that we're delivering to our customers. So they should be part of the ongoing success and financial returns that come from it. The main difference between Pluralsight and other sites like Coursera, edX, Udacity is, I would say, how we go about, like what we just talked about here is one of the biggest differences. Like how we go about finding our authors and the level of experts we bring into our platform is, I think, different than all the rest. And then we share with them in terms of the royalty model. And then I would say the speed at which we deliver new content in a high quality fashion. Like those are the things that really set Pluralsight apart, keeping up with that fast pace of change.
We probably have time for maybe 1 or 2 more.
Sure. Any that you want me to hit specifically, Ed? Or
maybe like calls to action. So I think first of all, I just want to say that I want to acknowledge Pluralsight for subsidizing the costs of the Hack Summit. You know, if it wasn't for Pluralsight, it would be much more challenging for us to pull off the Hack Summit, as well as the Pledge and the Hack Guides project. All those initiatives are being subsidized by Pluralsight because of the social entrepreneurship mission of Pluralsight. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then if audience members in our audience are curious about maybe becoming an author or taking a Pluralsight course, what are their calls to action there?
Yeah, if you go to the website, if you want to apply to be an author, just go to the website, click on the Teach tab, and then you can find details there on how to engage with our team on that. And you know, would love everyone here to kind of dig in and you see if there's things that we can provide you with in your own learning journey. I mean, I think we're going to be making available, you know, some benefits to everyone here that was part of Hack Summit. So when you see those things come through, like join in and you know, I would just say, like, pick where you want to go next in your career and then go after it and realize that that learning is the tool that gets you there.
Great. Thank you so much, Aaron. You know, it was great having you here. Thanks for sharing your best practices through your personal journey with us.
Yeah, happy to.
Yeah. So guys, just as an action item here again, if you learned something from Aaron's talk and you want to contribute here, we'd love to see a donation to one of our coding nonprofits through the user interface in your screen. So please consider doing that. You know, I think that it'll make a difference in their lives. And you know, up next we have Kent Beck, who is an incredibly illustrious programmer. It's going to be a thrill for us to meet him. So please stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few minutes. And thanks again, Aaron, for the great talk today.
Yeah, man, it was great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to stay on too if you want.
Yeah. I'll paste the Hangouts link here for others to join to ask questions.
Great.